Hello from wherever you're watching us, and I'm Wayne Anunda.
I'm Amy Modoni, and this is Hot Tongue.
Substance abuse and addiction among teenagers is a growing concern, not only in Kenya but also worldwide. Adolescents are particularly vulnerable to the allure of drugs and alcohol due to various factors, including peer pressure, curiosity, and a desire for social acceptance. This discussion explores the prevalence, consequences, and possible solutions to this pressing issue.
Substance abuse refers to the harmful or hazardous use of psychoactive substances like alcohol and drugs. It involves the misuse of these substances, often in excessive amounts or in ways that can lead to negative consequences.
Addiction, also known as substance use disorder, is a more severe form of substance abuse. It is characterized as a physical and psychological dependence on a substance, leading to compulsive use despite harmful consequences. Addiction often involves tolerance, which is needing more of the substance to achieve the desired effect, and withdrawal symptoms when not using the substance. Some of the commonly abused drugs include
Alcohol, tobacco, prescription medication, opioids, stimulants, marijuana, tobacco, heroin, and many more.
substance abuse among teenagers is a global phenomenon. In Kenya, as in many other countries, the use of drugs and alcohol among adolescents has been steadily rising. According to NACADA, alcohol and tobacco are among the most commonly abused substances by Kenyan teenagers. Furthermore, the availability of illicit drugs such as marijuana and cocaine has increased, contributing to the problem.
This brings us to the question, what are the causes of teenage substance abuse?
Hi, I'm Yomi, and one of the causes is peer pressure. Peer pressure is that feeling of belonging. So basically, what happens is if you're with a group of friends, and for example, they have a tendency of abusing said drugs like alcohol or the other ones that are listed before. And one time they offer you to, take a glass or to taste it. That feeling of if when you deny, they're gonna feel like you're special. Like they'll see you as an outcast. So just to fit in with them, you're gonna start like small. It's really gonna start small. So you take one glass becomes two becomes a bottle, and before you know it, you're addicted. You're hooked to drugs.
My name is Grace Lenchiro. Another cause of drug abuse in teens is the family influence. Maybe one of the parents, the guardians, or even the siblings is taking drugs. So the child will emulate this behavior and they will start taking the drugs. Okay, when you talk about family and stuff like that, you'll find that most of the behaviors we have is because of our parents. We emulate what they do. So the child is obviously feeling like, yeah, I should do this because mom is doing this, I should do this because dad is doing this. So they start taking drugs, they start doing what their parents are doing, and then eventually they also get hooked on this and it becomes like a habit. They start abusing it.
Yes, and before we go any further, if I may ask Grace, you talked about family influence. So, in your own opinion, family influence might be the backbone of all this pandemic.
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay. So, Yomi, if I may inquire, what are some of the consequences to teenage substance abuse?
The continuous or prolonged abuse of drugs is gonna have some serious effects on your health. One of them being addiction. When you become addicted to something, you become dependent on it. So, for example, if you're a long-term abuser of, let's say, alcohol, and you skip a day of not taking alcohol during this period, you lack drive, you lack energy to do anything because your body has become so dependent on this alcohol to perform day-to-day tasks. Another thing is tobacco smoking. Um, Tobacco smoking leads to something called lung cancer. And as we're all aware, cancer has no cure. So what happens is, now that you have lung cancer, and since it's uncurable, you're basically shortening your life by a whole lot, by a whole deal. And yeah, there's also alcohol, which leads to liver cirrhosis. And liver cirrhosis is where your liver becomes hard and starts to decay, stopping it from performing like completely, um, which thus leads to your death.
Yes, over to you, John.
I'd like to talk about academic decline. I said earlier about lack of education. They don't know what they're using. So they don't know their effects. Long term of alcohol or drugs, which make them not concentrate in class.
So, Grace, what's your take on this?
Drugs affect the way you think and the way you act. So these drugs may lead to some risky behaviors, which will later bring legal problems. Some of these risky behaviors, like when you take substances like alcohol, some people tend to get violent. When they get violent, they might cause a commotion. When they cause that commotion, the police will be involved. When the police get involved, the person gets arrested. And when this person is a teenager who needs a perfect record in order to get a job, in order to join a good university, this soils their record, so they end up ruining their futures.
As you all know, or some of you may know, that there's no challenge that might not have a solution to it. So, if I may ask, what are some of the possible solutions to this teenage substance abuse?
Well, first of all, is obviously education and awareness. If people get educated or made aware of the effects of drugs and the abuse of drugs, they'll most definitely stop, because we don't want people to die. Obviously, like, you wouldn't want your close friends or family to die, and we wouldn't want world leaders that are really doing something influential in the world to just suddenly die. So my take on it is just, we should inform people on the negative effects of drugs and drug abuse.
I totally agree to what you said, Yomi. And John, what's your take on this?
To me, it will be about parental involvement.
Okay, I could have said it better myself. So, Grace, what's your perspective on this? I totally agree with John. I could have said it better myself. So, Grace, what are some of the other possible solutions to teenage substance abuse?
I believe that there should be restrictions and consequences to these actions, because if they believe that they can just do something and there will be no consequences against it, they will end up being way too free, and they'll end up doing things that might destroy their future. So I believe that there should be restrictions, rules, strict rules that tell them this is what you're supposed to do. If you do this, this will happen. Like the way the law has gone against substance abuse by saying if you are under this age and you're taking this substance, there'll be repercussions. You'll go to jail. Your record will be soiled. Yes, I believe restrictions should be put in place.
Okay, so you think that if the government has an involvement in this, and then some laws have been put in place to deal with this pandemic, you think that maybe it might be a solution to this growing emergence? Yeah.
Yes, because this will instill fear on the children, on these teenagers, on these adolescents who want to do or to take place in this pandemic. Yes.
Okay. Yes. What about you, Baraka? What do you say?
I think in terms of solutions, one thing that has to be put is support systems. Support systems have to be set in place since obviously every time you get addicted to something, you're going to need help to get out of it, right? So, one way that we know and has been proven to work is rehabilitation. Through going through rehabilitation centers and finding people who are suffering just like you, and even through finding times where your parents can come and see you and see how you're getting better and better, it proves that you can grow and it gives you encouragement to even quit on these addictions. So, in terms of rehabilitation, I think in Kenya we've done a fairly good job, but we can do better in terms of the centers and where they are placed, especially. Because you may find that places where people use drugs the most is where the rehabilitation centers are lacking. And even the price, the idea of going to a rehabilitation center sounds expensive. So there's that, and also obviously treatment. In terms of treatment, it's just talking the way we're talking here and now, right? Every time you're addicted, you have to find people who are suffering, like minded, and you guys just talk. It's like how people argue over football. Eventually, you'll come to some sort of solution, or it goes on to the next. But as it continues, eventually you guys will come together and say, okay, we like this thing, and we want to stop because it's hurting us in many ways. So that's one way I think that we can find a solution here in Kenya through support systems, treatment, and rehabilitation.
We can all agree that substance abuse and addiction among teenagers in Kenya and worldwide is a complex issue with significant consequences. It demands a collective effort from schools, parents, communities, and governments to provide education, support, and treatment to combat this growing problem.
By addressing the root causes and offering help to those in need, we can work towards a healthier, drug free future for the youth. I've been your host, Amy Mudoni.
And I've been your other host, Wayne Anunda.